What would you do if, while demolishing a wall in your new house, you found the mummified bodies of an entire family sealed for decades in a space that, according to all construction plans, shouldn't exist? This is the macabre story of Rogelio Sandoval and the case that shook the foundations of Zacatecas in 1944, becoming the most disturbing mystery in Mexican construction history. The San Cayetano Hacienda stood majestically on the outskirts of Zacatecas since the early 19th century. Its pink stone walls and wide corridors had witnessed generations of prominent families from the region. However, in the winter of 1944, those century-old walls would reveal a secret so macabre that it would forever change the history of Mexican colonial architecture. Architect Rogelio Sandoval had dedicated 15 years of his life to studying and restoring Zacatecan architectural heritage when he received the commission that would mark the rest of his days. Rogelio was a meticulous man, graduated with distinction from the National School of Architecture, specialized in colonial constructions and haciendas from the viceregal period. At 42 years old, he had restored more than 30 historic properties throughout the state, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to discover at San Cayetano. The property had been acquired in November 1944 by Don Evaristo Contreras, a prosperous merchant from Guadalajara who planned to convert the old hacienda into a modern family residence. The construction had remained abandoned for almost 20 years since the death of its last owner, Don Laureano Herrera, in 1925. It's a property with much history. Architect Don Evaristo explained during their first meeting at the hacienda, "My intention is to preserve the original structure, but modernize the facilities so my family can live comfortably." Rogelio had inspected dozens of abandoned haciendas, but San Cayetano had something different. From the moment he crossed the threshold of the main entrance, he felt a strange sensation, as if the house had been waiting for his arrival. "Do you have the original construction plans?" asked Rogelio while examining the thick stone walls. "That's what's curious," responded Don Evaristo. "The plans that the notary gave me don't completely match the current structure. There are some discrepancies I can't understand." Rogelio took the plans and began studying them meticulously. The hacienda had been built in 1823 by Don Sebastián Morales, a prominent miner from the region, following the typical design of late colonial constructions. A central patio surrounded by rooms with thick masonry walls and beam and brick ceilings. "What kind of discrepancies?" asked Rogelio. "According to these plans, there should be 12 rooms," explained Don Evaristo, "but when we counted them physically, we only found 11, and there's a wall in the north wing that seems thicker than normal." Rogelio felt a pang of professional curiosity. During his years of experience, he had found undocumented modifications in many historic constructions, but Don Evaristo's description suggested something more complex. "We could do a complete reconnaissance of the property," proposed Rogelio. "I'd like to measure the entire perimeter and compare it with the original plans." Don Evaristo agreed immediately. The next day, Rogelio arrived at San Cayetano, accompanied by his assistant, young engineer Manuel Ibarra, and master builder Joaquin Velasco, a man with 30 years of experience in colonial constructions. "We'll start with the north wing," Rogelio told his team. "According to Evaristo, that's where the main discrepancies are." The north wing of the hacienda consisted of a 15-meter-long corridor with 3 rooms facing the central patio. However, when Rogelio began measuring the dimensions, he realized the numbers didn't match. "Manuel," he said to his assistant, "measure the total length of the corridor from the outside." Manuel took his measuring tape and measured carefully. 16 meters, architect. "That's strange," murmured Rogelio. "From the inside, the corridor measures only 15 meters." Joaquin, the master builder, approached to examine the wall that separated the last room from the north end. "Architect, this wall is definitely thicker than normal. Interior walls in these haciendas usually measure between 50 and 60 centimeter. This one measures almost 1.5 meters. Rogelio felt he had found something significant. "It's possible there's a sealed space behind this wall." "Very likely," responded Joaquin. "I've seen similar cases in other haciendas. Sometimes they sealed spaces to create hiding places or secret storage rooms." Rogelio decided to conduct a more detailed investigation. He contacted topographic engineer Aurelio Mendoza to perform a complete survey of the property with precision instruments. "Aurelio," he explained over the phone, "I need you to make a detailed plan of San Cayetano. There are discrepancies between the original plans and the current structure." Aurelio arrived at the hacienda 2 days later, equipped with his most precise measuring instruments. After a full day of work, he confirmed Rogelio's suspicions. "There's definitely an undocumented space," Aurelio reported. "According to my measurements, behind the north wall there's a room approximately 4 meters by 3 meters. "A complete room?" asked Rogelio with amazement. "That's right," confirmed Aurelio, "and the strangest thing is that, according to my measurements, it has access both from inside and outside the hacienda, but both accesses are sealed." Rogelio was intrigued by the architectural mystery. "Do you think we could open the wall without damaging the structure?" "It would be possible," responded Joaquin, "but we'd need to be very careful. These masonry walls are very solid, but also fragile, if not handled properly." Don Evaristo, informed of the findings, immediately authorized opening the wall. "I want to know what's there," he declared. "If we're going to live in this house, I don't like the idea of having sealed spaces we know nothing about." Rogelio scheduled the wall opening for Monday, the 4th of December, 1944. That morning he arrived at San Cayetano, accompanied by his complete team, Manuel, Joaquin, Aurelio, and had also hired 2 demolition specialists, the Castillo brothers. "We'll start by making a small hole," explained Joaquin. "We want to see what's inside before making a large opening." The Castillo brothers began working with hammer and chisel, carefully removing the mortar between the stone blocks. The work was slow and meticulous, as the wall had been built with extraordinary solidity. "Architect," said Roberto Castillo after 2 hours of work, "I already have a fist-sized hole. Do you want me to bring a lamp to see inside?" Rogelio approached with a hand lamp and directed the beam of light toward the interior of the sealed space. What he saw froze his blood. "My God," he murmured, instinctively stepping back. "What's wrong, architect?" asked Manuel with concern. Rogelio remained silent for several seconds, processing what he had seen. There's someone in there." "Someone?" asked Joaquin with incredulity. "A body," clarified Rogelio with a trembling voice. "There's a human body in that space." The team fell silent, processing the shocking revelation. Manuel was the first to react. "Are you sure, architect?" Rogelio extended the lamp to him. "See for yourself." Manuel approached the hole and directed the light inside. His reaction was immediate. He stepped back abruptly with a pale face. "It's true," he confirmed. "There's a body there, but it looks very old, like mummified." Joaquin also wanted to see. His experience in construction had prepared him to find strange objects in sealed walls, but never something like this. "This changes everything," he declared after observing. "We need to notify the authorities immediately." Rogelio agreed. "Manuel, go immediately to town and report this to the police. Tell them we need them to come with a forensic doctor or someone who can examine human remains." While Manuel departed for town, Rogelio decided to examine the sealed space more carefully. With the help of a more powerful lamp, he could observe the interior better. "Joaquin," he said to the master builder, "do you see what appears to be in the opposite corner?" Joaquin directed his gaze where Rogelio was pointing. It looks like another, smaller body. A child, perhaps." "It's possible," responded Joaquin gravely. The 2 men continued observing, and gradually realized there were more than 2 bodies in the sealed space. "Architect," said Joaquin in a barely audible voice, "I think there's a complete family in there." Rogelio felt a chill run down his spine. In his 15 years of experience restoring historic properties, he had found valuable objects, ancient documents, and occasionally animal remains, but never something so macabre. Manuel returned 2 hours later, accompanied by the chief of police of Zacatecas, Commander Florencio Aguilar, and Dr. Esteban Rosales, the region's forensic doctor. "Good morning, architect," greeted Commander Aguilar. "Manuel has told me a very strange story. Is it true you found human bodies sealed in a wall?" "It's true, Commander," responded Rogelio. "I recommend you see for yourself." Commander Aguilar approached the hole and observed the interior of the sealed space. His reaction was one of deep gravity. "Dr. Rosales, he called to the forensic doctor. "I need you to examine this immediately." Dr. Rosales was an older man with more than 20 years of experience as a forensic doctor. He had examined all types of deaths, but the situation at San Cayetano was completely unusual. "How long do you estimate these bodies have been here?" he asked the architect after observing for several minutes. "The wall appears original to the construction," responded Rogelio. "If so, these bodies could be more than 100 years old." "It's consistent with the state of conservation," observed Dr. Rosales. "The hermetic ceiling and the dry climate of Zacatecas have created ideal conditions for natural mummification." Commander Aguilar took control of the situation. "We need to completely open this wall to examine the scene, but this is now a criminal investigation." "Criminal?" asked Rogelio. "Couldn't it be an old family burial?" "Architect," responded the commander. "No one seals a complete family in a wall as a burial method. This suggests something much more sinister." During the rest of the day, the site became an active criminal investigation scene. Commander Aguilar organized a larger team for the complete opening of the wall, including photographers to document the entire process. "We'll work very carefully," explained the commander. "Every step will be photographed and documented. If this is what I suspect, we could be facing one of the most macabre crimes in Zacatecas history." The next day, Tuesday, the 5th of December, the systematic opening of the wall began. The work was carried out under the direct supervision of Dr. Rosales and with the presence of the official police photographer, Raul Santander. "We're going to remove the blocks one by one," explained Joaquin to the team. "We want to preserve the scene as much as possible." As the stone blocks were removed, the magnitude of the discovery became more evident. The sealed space contained not 2 or 3 bodies, as they had initially estimated, but 7 human bodies in total. "Dr. Rosales," said Commander Aguilar, "can you give us a preliminary evaluation?" Dr. Rosales had been carefully observing as the blocks were removed. "Based on what I can see, we have 2 adults, 2 adolescents, and 3 children, a complete family. Can you determine the cause of death?" "A more detailed examination will be necessary," responded Dr. Rosales. "But preliminarily I don't see obvious signs of physical trauma. It's possible they died from asphyxiation or starvation." Rogelio felt the mystery deepening. "Is it possible they were sealed alive?" "It's a possibility we can't rule out," responded Dr. Rosales gravely. When the wall was finally completely opened, the revealed scene was heartbreaking. The 7 bodies were distributed throughout the small room in a way that suggested they had tried to find comfort in their final moments. The 2 adults seemed to have tried to protect the children. "Photograph everything," ordered Commander Aguilar to the photographer. "We need complete documentation of each body's position." Rogelio observed the scene with a mixture of professional horror and architectural curiosity. "Commander, do you notice anything strange about the construction of this space?" "What do you mean?" "This room has no windows, but it also has no ventilation of any kind," explained Rogelio. "It's completely sealed, and look at the floor. It's built with the same type of tiles as the rest of the hacienda." "What does that suggest?" "That this room was built specifically to be sealed," responded Rogelio. "It's not a space that was blocked up later. It was designed from the beginning to be a prison." Dr. Rosales had begun his preliminary examination of the bodies. "Commander, there's something else I must report." "What did you find, Doctor?" "The bodies are in an extraordinary state of conservation," explained Dr. Rosales. "But more importantly, I found evidence that they tried to escape." "What kind of evidence?" "Scratches on the walls, particularly around the area where the door should be," pointed out Dr. Rosales. "And the nails of several of the bodies are broken and bloodied." Commander Aguilar examined the marks on the wall. "Are you sure these marks were made from inside?" "Completely sure," responded Dr. Rosales. "These people were alive when they were sealed in this room." The revelation caused an uncomfortable silence throughout the team. Rogelio approached to examine the construction of the sealed room more closely. "There's something else," he announced after several minutes of observation. "This wall wasn't built the same way as the rest of the hacienda." "What do you mean?" asked the commander. "The mortar is different," explained Rogelio. "Coarser, faster, as if it had been built in a hurry." Joaquin confirmed Rogelio's observation. "He's right, architect. This wall was built by someone who wanted to finish quickly, not by specialized craftsmen." Commander Aguilar began to formulate a theory. Is it possible someone built this prison specifically to lock up this family? Based on the architectural evidence, I'd say yes, responded Rogelio. But who would do such a thing, and why? Dr. Rosales had continued his examination of the bodies. Commander, I've made another important discovery. What? I've found personal objects that can help us identify these people, explained Dr. Rosales. One of the adult bodies wears a ring with an inscription. What does the inscription say? SM 1822, read Dr. Rosales. And there's a chain with a medallion that has the name Esperanza Morales engraved on it. Rogelio felt a chill upon hearing the surname Morales. That's the same surname as the original builder of the hacienda. Don Sebastian Morales? Asked Commander Aguilar. Exactly, confirmed Rogelio. According to the records, Don Sebastian Morales built this hacienda in 1823. Do you think these could be members of the Morales family? It's very possible, responded Rogelio. The initials on the ring could be Sebastian Morales and Esperanza Morales. Commander Aguilar decided to expand the investigation. We need to investigate the historical records about the Morales family. I want to know what happened to them and who could have been responsible for this. The next day, Rogelio went to the historical archive of Zacatecas accompanied by Commander Aguilar. They hoped to find information about the Morales family and the circumstances of their disappearance. Good morning, he greeted the archivist, Doña Carmen Elizondo. We're investigating the Morales family, who lived at the San Cayetano hacienda in the 1822nd. Doña Carmen was an older woman who had dedicated her life to preserving Zacatecas' historical documents. The family of Don Sebastian Morales is a very sad story. Sad? What do you know about them? Asked Commander Aguilar. Don Sebastian was a very successful miner, began Doña Carmen. He built the San Cayetano hacienda for his family, his wife Doña Esperanza, and their 5 children. 5 children? Asked Rogelio. We found 7 bodies in total. Don Sebastian and Doña Esperanza had 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls, confirmed Doña Carmen. The records are very clear about that. What happened to the family? That's the mysterious part, responded Doña Carmen. According to official records, the entire family suddenly disappeared in February 1824. They simply left one day and never returned. Disappeared? The records indicate that Don Sebastian had had problems with some business partners, explained Doña Carmen. There were disputes over mining concessions and large sums of money involved. What kind of disputes? Asked Commander Aguilar. Don Sebastian had discovered a very rich silver vein, but his partners wanted a larger share of the profits, continued Doña Carmen. The negotiations had become very tense. Who were his partners? Mainly Don Aurelio Herrera and Don Gonzalo Vasquez, responded Doña Carmen. Both were very powerful and influential men in Zacatecas. Rogelio remembered the name. Herrera is the same surname as the last owner of San Cayetano. Exactly, confirmed Doña Carmen. The hacienda passed into the hands of Don Aurelio Herrera after the disappearance of the Morales family and remained in the Herrera family until Don Laureano Herrera died in 1925. Commander Aguilar immediately saw the connection. Are you suggesting that Don Aurelio Herrera could have been involved in the disappearance of the Morales family? The documents don't say so explicitly, responded Doña Carmen carefully, but there are some inconsistencies in the official records. What kind of inconsistencies? The property transfer of the hacienda was very quick, explained Doña Carmen. Normally when a family disappears, there's a legal period before the property can be transferred. But in this case, Don Aurelio Herrera obtained the deed only 3 months after the disappearance. Rogelio felt the puzzle pieces beginning to fit together. Is there any record of what exactly happened the night they disappeared? There's a very strange testimony, responded Doña Carmen, searching through her documents. A testimony from a hacienda worker named Patricio Sandoval. Sandoval? Asked Rogelio with surprise. That's my surname. Is it possible he's an ancestor of yours? Asked Doña Carmen. It's very possible, responded Rogelio. My family has lived in Zacatecas for generations. Doña Carmen found the document she was looking for. Here's Patricio Sandoval's testimony, dated the 15th of February, 1824. What does it say? Asked Commander Aguilar. Patricio worked as a caretaker of the hacienda, read Doña Carmen. He says that on the night of the 12th of February, 1824, several men on horseback arrived at San Cayetano. He recognized Don Aurelio Herrera and Don Gonzalo Vasquez among them. What else? Patricio says the men entered the hacienda, and he was hearing screams and arguments for several hours. Continued Doña Carmen. The next day, Don Sebastian and his family had disappeared, and Don Aurelio told him the Morales had decided to go live in Mexico City. Did Patricio believe that explanation? Apparently not, responded Doña Carmen. He says in his testimony that during the following days he heard strange noises coming from the hacienda during the night, noises like they were building something. Rogelio and Commander Aguilar looked at each other significantly. Building something? Patricio also mentions that Don Aurelio hired several masons from distant towns to make repairs to the hacienda, continued Doña Carmen, but Patricio never saw what kind of repairs they made. Is there more information about these masons? Only that after finishing the work, Don Aurelio dismissed them immediately, and they were never seen in the region again, responded Doña Carmen. Commander Aguilar was building an increasingly clear theory. Was this testimony officially investigated? That's another inconsistency, explained Doña Carmen. Patricio presented his testimony to the mayor, but there's no evidence that a formal investigation was conducted. Why not? Don Aurelio Herrera was a very powerful man, responded Doña Carmen. He had a lot of political and economic influence. It's possible he suppressed any investigation. Rogelio felt disturbed by the implications. Are you suggesting that Don Aurelio Herrera murdered the Morales family and then sealed them in a wall of their own house? The documents don't say so explicitly, responded Doña Carmen, but the circumstantial evidence is very strong. Commander Aguilar decided to deepen the investigation. Is there any information about Don Aurelio Herrera after 1824? Don Aurelio lived at the hacienda until his death in 1867, responded Doña Carmen. He had a very prosperous life, considerably expanding his mining businesses and his family. He married and had 3 children, explained Doña Carmen. His eldest son, Don Ricardo Herrera, inherited the hacienda and most of the businesses. Did Don Aurelio's descendants continue living at San Cayetano? Yes, until Don Laureano Herrera, who was the last, confirmed Doña Carmen. It's interesting that Don Laureano never married or had children. Is there any information about why Don Laureano didn't marry? The records indicate that Don Laureano was a very reserved and somewhat strange man, responded Doña Carmen carefully. There were rumors that the hacienda was haunted. Haunted? Workers reported strange noises during the night, explained Doña Carmen. Voices that seemed to come from the walls, footsteps in empty corridors, things like that. Rogelio felt a chill. When did these reports begin? According to the documents, almost immediately after Don Aurelio moved to the hacienda, responded Doña Carmen, and they continued for generations. Commander Aguilar was taking detailed notes. Is there any record of anyone investigating these phenomena? Don Ricardo Herrera, Don Aurelio's son, hired a priest to bless the hacienda in 1845, explained Doña Carmen. But according to the records, the phenomena continued. And Don Laureano, did he experience these phenomena? Apparently yes, responded Doña Carmen. The documents indicate that Don Laureano became increasingly reclusive during his final years. He rarely left the hacienda, and when he did, he seemed very disturbed. Rogelio began to understand the magnitude of the horror they had discovered. Is it possible that Don Laureano knew what had happened to the Morales family? It's very possible, responded Doña Carmen. Family guilt often passes from generation to generation. Commander Aguilar decided they had enough information to proceed with the criminal investigation. Doña Carmen, could we obtain copies of all these documents? Of course, responded the archivist, but I must warn you that this could open very deep wounds in some prominent families of Zacatecas. What do you mean? The descendants of Don Gonzalo Vasquez still live in the region, explained Doña Carmen. They're a very respected and influential family. Rogelio returned to San Cayetano that afternoon with a completely different perspective on what they had discovered. It was no longer simply an architectural mystery. It was evidence of one of the most macabre crimes in Zacatecas history. Manuel, he said to his assistant, I want you to do a detailed analysis of the construction of that sealed room. I want to know exactly when it was built and by whom. Manuel had been working at the site throughout the week, documenting every aspect of the construction. Architect, based on the type of mortar and construction techniques, I'd say that room was sealed approximately 6 months after the rest of the hacienda was completed. 6 months? The mortar has a different composition, explained Manuel. More sand, less lime. It's the type of mixture used when you want to build quickly without worrying about long-term durability. As if someone had been in a hurry to seal that space? Asked Rogelio. Exactly, confirmed Manuel. And there's something else, Architect. I've found remains of construction tools buried near the external wall. What kind of tools? Hammers, chisels, mason's trowels, listed Manuel, all buried very superficially, as if someone had wanted to get rid of the evidence quickly. Commander Aguilar, who had arrived that morning to supervise the continuation of the investigation, listened to the conversation with great interest. Do you think those tools belong to the masons that Don Aurelio hired? He asked. It's very likely, responded Rogelio. If our theory is correct, Don Aurelio would have wanted to eliminate any evidence connecting those men to the construction of the sealed room. Dr. Rosales had continued his forensic examination of the bodies throughout the week. That morning he had important news to share. Commander, he announced upon arriving at the site, I've completed my preliminary analysis of the remains. What have you discovered, Doctor? First, I can confirm that these are 7 individuals, 2 adults, 2 adolescents, and 3 children, explained Dr. Rosales. The approximate ages match what we know about the Morales family. Could you determine the cause of death? The evidence suggests gradual asphyxiation, responded Dr. Rosales gravely. There are no signs of extreme physical violence, but there is clear evidence that they died slowly. How long do you estimate they could have survived, sealed in that space? Based on the size of the room and the number of people, probably between 3 and 5 days, responded Dr. Rosales. Enough time to realize their situation and try desperately to escape. Rogelio felt a knot in his stomach imagining the horror the Morales family must have experienced. Did you find anything else? Yes, continued Dr. Rosales. I've identified what appear to be messages carved into the wall. Messages? Words and phrases carved with sharp objects into the soft mortar, explained Dr. Rosales. They're on the wall facing the central patio, as if they had hoped someone would eventually find them. Commander Aguilar approached immediately. What do those messages say? Most are in Spanish, but there are some in what appears to be Nahuatl, responded Dr. Rosales. I've been able to decipher some. Aurelio betrayed us. My children didn't deserve this. May God forgive him because we cannot. And the messages in Nahuatl? I'd need a specialist to translate them completely, admitted Dr. Rosales. But they appear to be prayers or curses. Joaquin, the master builder, had been listening to the conversation while continuing to document the construction of the sealed room. Architect, he said to Rogelio, there's something else you should see. What did you find? I've been examining the original construction of the hacienda, explained Joaquin, and I've discovered that the sealed room wasn't a later addition. It was planned from the beginning. Are you sure? Completely, affirmed Joaquin. The room's foundations are part of the original foundations of the hacienda. Don Sebastian Morales built his own prison without knowing it. The revelation caused an uncomfortable silence throughout the team. Rogelio began to understand the true magnitude of the betrayal. Are you suggesting that Don Aurelio planned this from the moment Don Sebastian decided to build the hacienda? It's the only explanation that makes sense, responded Joaquin. Don Aurelio must have influenced the original design, ensuring there was a space that could be easily sealed when necessary. Commander Aguilar was taking detailed notes of each revelation. This completely changes our understanding of the crime. It wasn't an impulsive act, but an elaborate plan developed over months, possibly years. Manuel had been working on analyzing the original construction documents. Commander, I found something interesting in the original plans of the hacienda. What did you discover? The plans are signed by Don Sebastian Morales, but there's also a second signature, explained Manuel. The signature of Don Aurelio Herrera as consulting partner. Consulting partner means Don Aurelio had direct influence on the hacienda's design, continued Manuel. He probably suggested modifications that Don Sebastian incorporated without suspecting their true intentions. Rogelio examined the plans carefully. "Look at this." He pointed to a handwritten note in the margin. It says, "Special storage room, limited access, AH." "Ah, Aurelio Herrera," murmured Commander Aguilar. "We have documentary evidence that he planned that space from the beginning." During the following days, the team continued documenting every aspect of the discovery. The news had begun to leak through Zacatecas, causing great commotion in the local community. Don Evaristo Contreras, the current owner of the hacienda, had been following the investigation with great concern. "Architect," he said to Rogelio, "what's going to happen to the property? My family no longer feels comfortable with the idea of living here." "I understand perfectly," responded Rogelio. "After what we've discovered, I couldn't live here peacefully either." "Do you think it's really haunted?" Rogelio had been reflecting on that question for days. "I'm not a superstitious person, Don Evaristo, but after having seen what they did to that family, I understand why workers reported strange phenomena. The nighttime noises? I think Don Aurelio's descendants lived with the weight of this secret for generations," explained Rogelio. "It's possible that some of those paranormal phenomena were actually real sounds produced by structural changes in the sealed room." "Structural changes?" "Decomposing bodies, temperature changes, settling," listed Rogelio. "All this could have caused creaking, movements, even sounds that could be interpreted as voices." Don Evaristo seemed somewhat more calm with this scientific explanation. "And what do you recommend I do with the property?" "That's a very personal decision," responded Rogelio. "From an architectural standpoint, the hacienda is structurally sound and could be completely restored, but I understand your emotional reservations." Commander Aguilar had been working on the legal aspect of the investigation. Although the crimes had occurred more than a century earlier, he wanted to ensure the truth was officially documented. "Architect," he said to Rogelio, "we've received an unexpected visit." "From whom?" "Don Eduardo Vasquez, descendant of Don Gonzalo Vasquez," explained the commander. "He wants to speak with us about the investigation." Don Eduardo Vasquez was an older man, elegantly dressed, who arrived at San Cayetano, accompanied by his personal lawyer. "Good morning, gentlemen," he greeted formally. "I've come because I've heard the rumors about what you've found here." "They're not rumors, Don Eduardo," responded Commander Aguilar. "We've found solid evidence of a multiple crime that occurred in 1824. I know you've mentioned the name of my ancestor, Don Gonzalo Vasquez," continued Don Eduardo. "I come to offer information that could be relevant to your investigation." Rogelio felt intrigued. "What kind of information?" "My family has kept certain documents for generations," explained Don Eduardo. "Documents I thought would never see the light of day." "What kind of documents?" Don Eduardo opened a leather folder he carried with him. Letters between Don Gonzalo Vasquez and Don Aurelio Herrera, dated between 1823 and 1825. Commander Aguilar approached immediately. "May I examine those letters?" "That's why I'm here," responded Don Eduardo. "My family has lived with the weight of this secret for 5 generations. It's time for the truth to come to light." The letters revealed chilling details about the conspiracy against the Morales family. Don Gonzalo and Don Aurelio had meticulously planned the crime for months. "Read this letter dated the 10th of January, 1824, pointed out Don Eduardo. Don Aurelio writes to Don Gonzalo, "The special room is ready. Sebastian suspects nothing. We just need to find the right moment." And this one from the 15th of February, 1824, continued Don Eduardo. Don Gonzalo responds to Don Aurelio, "The work is finished. The masons have been silenced. No one will be able to connect us to what happened." Rogelio felt a chill reading the letters. The masons have been silenced. What does that mean? "According to family tradition," explained Don Eduardo with a broken voice, "Don Aurelio and Don Gonzalo also killed the masons who sealed the room. They couldn't risk anyone revealing what they had done." "Where are those masons buried?" "We don't know," admitted Don Eduardo. "But according to the letters, their bodies were thrown into one of the abandoned mines in the region." Dr. Rosales had been listening to the conversation while continuing his forensic work. "Don Eduardo, is there any information about why they decided to preserve these letters?" "My great-great-grandfather Don Gonzalo apparently repented of what he had done," explained Don Eduardo. He kept the letters as a silent confession, with instructions that they be delivered to the authorities if the truth was ever discovered. "Why did you decide to confess now?" "Because I can no longer carry this weight," responded Don Eduardo with tears in his eyes. "I've lived my entire life knowing that my family participated in one of the most horrendous crimes in Zacatecas history." The letters also revealed the motive for the crime. Don Sebastián Morales had discovered an extraordinarily rich silver vein, but had decided to renegotiate his partnership with Don Aurelio and Don Gonzalo, offering them a smaller share of the profits. According to this letter, read Commander Aguilar, Don Sebastián had threatened to dissolve the partnership completely and work the mine on his own. Don Aurelio and Don Gonzalo couldn't allow that, continued Don Eduardo. They had invested too much money and expected enormous profits. So the plan was to kill Don Sebastián and take control of the mine? Initially, yes, explained Don Eduardo, but Don Sebastián realized their intentions and threatened to denounce them to the authorities in Mexico City. That's why they decided to kill the entire family? Don Sebastián had documented all his transactions with them, responded Don Eduardo. If he died, but his wife or children survived, they could have used those documents to incriminate them. Rogelio began to understand the perverse logic behind the crime, so they decided to eliminate all witnesses. Exactly, confirmed Don Eduardo, and the plan worked perfectly for more than a century. During the following weeks, the investigation expanded to include a search of the abandoned mines where the bodies of the masons might be buried. Using historical maps and clues from the letters, the team identified 3 possible mines. "The most likely mine is La Esperanza," explained Aurelio Mendoza, the surveyor. According to the maps, Don Aurelio had exclusive access to that mine during the relevant period. The search at La Esperanza revealed more evidence of the crime's scope. At the bottom of the mine, the team found the remains of 4 adult men, along with construction tools and personal objects that confirmed they were the masons hired to seal the room. Don Aurelio really didn't leave loose ends, observed Commander Aguilar while documenting the new site. Except for the letters, pointed out Rogelio. Don Gonzalo kept the evidence that would eventually incriminate them, noted the commander. The Morales family case officially became the most documented crime of the 19th century in Mexico. The bodies were finally buried in Zacatecas' main cemetery with a ceremony that attracted hundreds of people from throughout the region. Don Evaristo finally decided to donate the San Cayetano hacienda to the state of Zacatecas, to be converted into a historical museum dedicated to the memory of the Morales family. "It's the right thing to do," he explained during the donation ceremony. "This property should never be a private residence again. It should serve as a reminder of what can happen when human greed has no limits." Rogelio completed his work at San Cayetano with a completely transformed perspective on his profession. The case had demonstrated that architecture could be both an art and a weapon, and that buildings could keep terrible secrets for centuries. "Manuel," he said to his assistant during their last day at the hacienda, "this case has taught me something important about our work." "What, architect?" "That when we restore historic buildings, we're not just preserving architecture," explained Rogelio. "We're also preserving human history, both the beautiful and the horrible." The San Cayetano Museum opened to the public a year later, with a permanent exhibition about the Morales family case. The room where the bodies were found was preserved exactly as they found it, with explanatory plaques detailing the complete investigation. Don Eduardo Vázquez donated all the family letters to the museum, along with a written confession in which he accepted his family's historical responsibility for the crimes. "I cannot change what my ancestors did," he wrote in his confession, "but I can ensure that the truth is known and that the victims are remembered with dignity." The case also led to changes in Mexican laws regarding the investigation of historical crimes, establishing specific protocols for handling archaeological evidence that might be related to criminal activities. Rogelio Sandoval continued his career as an architect, specializing in restoration, but never forgot the lessons learned at San Cayetano. He approached each subsequent project with a new understanding that old buildings can contain stories that go far beyond their architectural value. "Architecture," he wrote in his memoirs years later, "is the most permanent testimony of human nature. It preserves not only our aesthetic aspirations, but also our darkest secrets." Commander Aguilar was promoted to Chief of Police of the state of Zacatecas, partly for his exemplary handling of the Morales case. He established Mexico's first department specialized in historical crimes, dedicated to investigating cold cases that could be solved with new forensic techniques. Dr. Rosales published a legal medical study on the case that became reference material for forensic experts throughout Latin America. His work helped establish new protocols for examining ancient human remains. Don Eduardo Vasquez dedicated the rest of his life to charity work and social justice, trying to compensate in some measure for his family's crimes. He established a foundation that provided free legal support to families of victims of violent crimes. And the San Cayetano Hacienda, which had been built as a symbol of one family's success and prosperity, finally became a monument to justice and historical memory. Visitors to the museum often report a strange sensation when in the sealed room, but it's no longer a sensation of terror. According to many testimonies, it's rather a sensation of peace, as if the souls of the Morales family had finally found the rest that was denied them in life. The macabre story of the Morales became one of Zacatecas' best-known legends. But it was no longer just a horror story. It had transformed into a story about the importance of truth, justice, and historical memory. And on the silent nights of Zacatecas, when the wind blows between the pink stone colonial buildings, some say you can still hear echoes of the past. But they're no longer screams of desperation. They're whispers of gratitude from a family that can finally rest in peace, knowing their story has been told and that justice, though late, finally arrived. And so concludes the macabre story of the Morales, a family that disappeared between sealed walls, but whose memory will endure forever in the annals of Mexican history. Dear listeners, I hope this story has kept you on the edge of your seats. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Terrorfonía channel, where every week we bring you the most mysterious and terrifying stories. Remember that all the stories we tell on Terrorfonía are works of fiction, although some may be inspired by real events or popular legends. Our goal is to entertain you and make you experience intense emotions from the comfort of your homes. Until next time, and may you have sweet dreams if you can. See you in the next episode of Terrorfonía.